Next Radio with Broadcast Bionics. Innovative solutions for creative people.
Does anyone know the old guy who's a little inappropriate for his age? You know, the guy who hangs around nightclubs, drives a sports car, tries to pick up the young girls, potentially a little bit balding and maybe pushing a belly? Or the old girl who drinks too much Chardonnay, trying to pick up the young guys, and she's usually asking the DJ for the songs, and just generally acting badly for their age? It pains me to say, but the brand that I worked for, 5FM, was slowly becoming the inappropriate old person in a nightclub. 23-year-olds will always be 23, but we let our brand become a 30-something, and it happens before you even know it. So how did we go about getting our youthful groove back? The South African commercial radio landscape is only 20 years old, and 5FM as a state-owned broadcaster is close to 40. With the advent of democracy and the democratization of the airwaves, 4 more youth stations entered into the market and more than 18 university stations, all playing within 5FM space. It was an interesting time, but through brand domination and an all-encompassing youth strategy, 5FM managed to dominate the airwaves for many years. In fact, by 2010, audiences had reached 2.4 million, but by 2011, they had begun to stabilize, and in 2012, they were on a rapid decline. And the early part of 2013, they dipped well below 2 million. It was time to embark on some realistic analysis as to what it is that 5FM was doing. It's almost like we were going through a quarter-life crisis, and we had to ask ourselves some really hard questions. We knew through national trends that the time spent listening across the youth segment had declined 100% in the last 10 years. We also knew that our cume was rapidly declining and that the ages 16 to 24 were no longer consuming as much radio as they were, but the 25-pluses were. We also knew that on 5FM, the biggest part of our day, when we had the biggest cume, was a 30-minute music mix, which was devoid of any personality or DJs, which is obviously a problem if you're a personality-driven station. And we had an issue with both our morning and afternoon drive shows who were operating in silos and often used to speak about their audiences. So there was very little synergy across our daytime lineup. In 2013, we embarked on a major research project focusing on young South Africans across all the major metropolitans in South Africa, both listeners and non-listeners. And I think they kind of told us what, in many instances, we knew already, but there were some very telling insights. And the first thing they said to us is, as a brand, they knew what we looked like, so they recognized the logo, but they had no idea what we stood for. The next thing they told us was our presenters were all arrogant, both at events and on air, and they told us that our content had become completely irrelevant. They also said to us that we were a brand without a heart, so we knew how to party, but we didn't know how to invest back into any charities. They told us that if they lived outside the Johannesburg metropole area, they felt disconnected from the radio station, and there was a better need for news and information, and that our social media feed actually didn't tell us anything. They also told us that we didn't support South African music, and they also said that we didn't support underdog DJs within the communities in which they operated. They did, however, tell us that they were passionate about being South African and that they wanted to make a difference to our country. With this in mind, we wanted to reinvigorate and reinvent our product. We created a 3-year strategy to stop audience decline and to grow loyalty across youthful South Africans. We wanted to remain the true melting pot of youth culture in South Africa, and we wanted to create revenue opportunities, and we wanted to create relationships with our audience outside of FM. The first thing we did is we went and re-looked at what the composite listener was all about. Surely we wanted to know what they looked like and how they performed, but we were more interested in what they were thinking and what their emotional triggers were. We wanted to know what made these people tick. In our research, the audience told us that their day had started earlier, so we made our breakfast show start earlier as well. James mentioned earlier he went to a conference with Valerie, and he was on the other side of the room. As part of this process, our breakfast show DJ was consulting with Valerie, and she said these people are making the biggest mistake ever by moving their breakfast show forward. And it's quite daunting when you hear something like that and you're operating on a national radio station. But we moved the breakfast show from a 6 a.m. start to a 5 a.m. start. We also knew that there was a very definite split in the way that the audience consumed radio at 8 a.m. So we considered options, and we created what we called a power breakfast, which ran from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., but it used 2 very separate presenters offering different things for the audiences that were consuming the brand at any given time. We also analyzed our talent, and we had a look at longevity, relevance to the brand. We looked if they were team players, and we asked ourselves, are they going to be with us in the long term? And ultimately what that meant is we had to decrease the on-air age of our staff. We found staff and new DJs from campus radio stations across the country, and that really gave us the feeling that we're starting to talk to more people across the country. We contracted tastemakers in the fields of dance music, hip-hop, and house because the audience, through the focus group research, told us that they were passionate about the music that we were playing. In order to try and drive social messages, we used unsold inventory to tell good stories about charities doing work within our footprint. And this gave the audience a sense that we actually did care. And we changed our content angles, and we tried to make the content that we were delivering a little more encompassing. From a marketing perspective, we hadn't been active in the marketplace for more than 5 years. So people forgot what it is that we were all about. And the first part of our marketing strategy was a campaign called Upgrade 555. And that was to really reintroduce the new lineup to our current audience. And we just wanted to let them know what we were doing. We did this obviously through on-air promotion as well as social media feeds. And the campaign performed quite well for us, often trending. And it was also very important for us to let our presenters go into the communities that we were serving. And the new breakfast show actually went on the road in the first week of their broadcasting and broadcast from taxi ranks, schools, universities, people's homes, and people's offices. And it was just a really nice way for the audience to get a tangible feeling of what it is that 5FM was all about. The second part of the campaign was to redefine what 5FM was all about. And we said to ourselves what it is that we want this brand to represent. And we figured that it needed to be an amplification of the youth lifestyle, and the campaign Live Loud was launched. This incorporated a TV advert, it had billboards, and it really spoke to the heart and soul of our audience. So what happened with revenue? Revenue suffered, I'm not going to lie. It was difficult to go into agencies and tell them that we were no longer going to cater for the audience that they were buying. We were going to cater for the youth audience, which we should have been serving all the time. And that was tough, and revenue definitely suffered. The results, however, on air were quite tangible, and it was quite nice to see. We no longer had presenters talking about driving luxury German vehicles. We now have presenters talking about parking their cars on inclines because their starter motors don't work, and they need to freewheel their cars in order to get it started. We also don't have presenters talking about being in university from 15 years ago. They're currently in university, or they've just come from university. So it was important for us that the presenters knew and understood the language which the audience was speaking, and we really are in that space. Our eventing has become better, and in the course of the last weekend, for the first time, we've acted into the market space, and we held an event on Saturday which had 10,000 people and sold out capacity. So it's really changed. And I think the nice thing is we've become the guy in the bar picking up the young girls, and we're the guy that all the girls want. The last piece that I'd like to show you is the TV advert which we launched, and it used people that are part of the audience, and it really encapsulates what brand 5FM is all about.
Don't forget to ask your parents to come.
To my colleagues at the BBC, I'm looking forward to the biased commentary during the Rugby World Cup, and all I can say is go Springboks. I thank you.